Welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. I'm Conrad Weaver. Thanks for joining me today. Craig Semple spent 25 years in the New South Wales police force. Plainclothes work, drug squads, major investigations, the kind of career that demands everything from you and then asks for a little more. And like a lot of first responders, Craig didn't think he was falling apart. He thought he was just doing the job. But behind the scenes, the costs were stacking up. Sleep disappearing, alcohol increasing, and the constant drive to stay busy, stay stressed, and stay in motion. Because slowing down meant feeling what he'd been carrying. Well, in today's conversation, Craig shares what it feels like to lose your identity when the badge comes off and how he built a recovery plan the way he used to run investigations, step by step, with real tools that actually hold up in the real world. Hey, if you're a first responder, a leader, or a family member who's trying to understand what's happening to someone you love, this episode matters. Because this isn't about weakness, it's about maintenance, truth, and the kind of resilience you can actually live with. Craig's my first guest from down under in Australia. So thanks for tuning in. And hey, by the way, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button right now so you don't miss what's coming next. And now here's my conversation with Craig Semple. Well, Craig, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. It's so good to have you on the program.
Conrad, thank you for having me, mate.
It's a privilege to have somebody from what they call down under on the show. I think this is the first time we've had an Australian on the program. So welcome.
Well, that's an honor.
So tell us a little bit about you. You served in law enforcement for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, look, I joined the police force here in New South Wales back in 1988. I was a young 18-year-old when I walked through the police academy gates at Goulburn. New South Wales police force is one of the largest police forces in the English-speaking world. We've got about 17,000 serving cops and 20,000 support staff. So
now, New South Wales is
that's
for those who don't understand Australia. That's the state or a province.
Yes, that's a state. So, so New South Wales is one of the largest states geographically, as far as area goes, but also population-wise. So we've got New South Wales Police Force. I guess we've got a population of over 8 million or something that we're serving here. So that was back in 1988. It was a pretty wild time back then too. We had a lot of corruption and issues going back in those sort of old days. There was a big commission of inquiry into all that in 1994 and basically cleaned it all up. But it was pretty crazy times. But I worked in Sydney for about 5 years when I graduated. Went into plainclothes very early in my career. I loved being an investigator. I just loved getting my teeth into a good, long, protracted investigation and hunting people down. So I got into that pretty early in my career, and then I basically transferred all around the state of New South Wales. I did time in the outback, where I worked on my own as a detective. I worked in regional areas, in drug squads. Huge amount of my time was spent doing regional detective work, everything from homicides all the way through to outlaw motorcycle gang investigations and everything in between as well. So there was a lot going on there. My brother also followed me in the police force. He ended up being a tactical sniper in our tactical operations unit. And he was stabbed, nearly died probably 2 weeks into his career. The drug dealer stabbed him and his mate. His mate died, but he survived his wounds just. So he and I both had joint careers in the police, which I was really proud of throughout those years. But mate, I had a long career. It went for 25 years, but I was medically retired at the rank of detective sergeant in 2013 as a result of post-traumatic stress disorder and also major depressive disorder as well.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the similarities between U.S. law enforcement and Australia there's probably a lot of similarities there, right, as far as what you guys experience.
I definitely would agree. Look, I've spoken to law enforcement in the UK as well. I think right across the Western world at the moment, a lot of the challenges that law enforcement face are very similar right across the board. Look, times have changed. A lot of my issues were trauma related, definitely over the course of my career, but it was it was more burnout that finished me in the end. It was, for those of us who, and this is one of the things I'm still working with the police force very closely now, is trying to change culture of help seeking because, we have, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere, in law enforcement, you have this culture where you have this expectation on yourself that you've got to be tough enough to take everything. With that, I mean, it's a real barrier for people putting their hand up and getting the help they need. But for those of us who don't get the help when we need it, the professional help, we just basically fall back on our own coping strategies. And for me, those coping strategies, they're very, very common. One of them was alcohol abuse. So substance use is a big avoidance strategy. So I was drinking a lot. But also on top of that, I was trying to outrun it. So, I had this thing called post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, it was I had this monster trying to pull me down that no one knew about. I was just, all the nightmares and everything else that I was going through at that time, no one had a clue about. I also didn't understand a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder back then. So I was missing a lot of the key warning signs. If I'd had better education, which is one of the things I'm doing now, I probably would have been able to join the dots a little bit better and seen a lot of my behaviours as part of a bigger problem. But one of my other main coping strategies was in trying to outrun it was by intentionally maintaining really high levels of stress. So I was just, I would plan an investigation. I'd be picking my targets, doing the drug work. We had bikie gangs and stuff I was working on. And every time I finished one of those big investigations where I was under the pump, huge amounts of adrenaline, lots of risk-taking, lots of dangerous work that we were doing. And I was taking a lot of unnecessary risks with that as well, just to get the adrenaline hit. But then as soon as we'd finish one, I'd be looking for the next one. I just couldn't sit still. It was one of my psychiatrists eventually described it as like having some sort of manic defense as a trying to stay. It's a sort of like an avoidance strategy. If I was burying myself in work and danger, then I didn't have to deal with the stuff I really needed to deal with, if that makes sense. And so, basically with the burnout, what happened was that massive loads of stress over a long period of time combined with huge amounts of alcohol and a chronic lack of sleep over, a good 8, 9, 10 years, where I was sleeping somewhere between 2 and 5 hours sleep a night, 5 being a great night's sleep. Eventually you can't sustain that, and eventually the burnout happened. So, the burnout with that went depression and everything is associated with that as well. So instead of dealing with one mental illness, which is PTSD, I ended up with a second one, which was depression and burnout. And that was really what floored me in the end and what finished my career as well, when I was really at the top of my game and I had so much more to offer.
What was the response from your superiors in the department?
Look, it's one of those, and I'm sure it'd be the same in the States. It's one of those really tricky situations where everyone's under the same sort of pressures. And when they did an investigation into my workplace injury, they interviewed some of my superiors and they acknowledged that they knew that I had problems, that I was always having problems sleeping. And they said, well, why didn't you do anything about it? And the response was, we are all like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's so what are we supposed to do? We're all in the same situation. However, that's sort of the middle management area. There were senior managers that had probably the right attitudes towards it too. I remember going back to one of my commanders, a senior leader, and I said to him one day, over coffee, I said, mate, my eyes have been opened up to some huge thing I really didn't have much awareness of, but I've learnt so much about my own situation. Now I can see my workmates that are heading in the same direction. Like they're stepping in the same footprints that I've left in the sand. Allow me to come back and talk to everyone and share my experience and his attitude was, well, mate, if we have you coming back and doing that, Craig, we'll have everyone going off sick and we won't have anyone at work. And I stopped. So what do you do?
So consequently, they're all coming to work sick, right?
Yeah, exactly. So look, that was very, very early in my journey. And then there was years of me trying to get get back on my feet and go through that recovery journey. But now I'm sort of coming back in. I'm well and truly invited back into the police force now. I do a lot of speaking arrangements for them.
So when did that change happen, and why?
I'll just go back a little bit on the journey. So basically, when I was medically retired from the police force, I went through 3 years of hell. So it's up and down, massive roller coaster of high anxiety with PTSD, crash and burn, depression. Had a real battle with suicide over those 3 years as well, which ended up culminating 3 years down the track in a suicide attempt when my marriage broke down, and ended up in a hospital emergency department, and pretty lucky to get through that. But it was sort of, I call it bottom bouncing, where sometimes you got to, like for me, I think I had to hit rock bottom before I started looking up, which is unfortunate, but that's what happened. But that whole experience gave me such a fright. I thought I need to find a way through this. So I made a pact with my oldest son and myself. This would never happen again. I'm going to find a way to get myself back on my feet and get my life back. So what happened from there was I ended up, I got released from hospital, and I sat in my lounge room one day, my living room, and I thought, right, how are you going to do this? 3 years have been just drowning. What's going to change? And I decided there and then, I thought, mate, you used to run investigations which were logistical nightmares, like absolutely very complex investigations. And for the last 3 years, I was falling apart putting, my kids' school lunches together. And I thought, what was different? And the key thing that I realised was that back in my police career, whenever I had a job to run, I'd first work a plan out. I'd have an investigation plan. I'd have risk assessments, do all this. I thought, I've just been through one of the biggest personal challenges of my life, and I've had no plan right from the start, no plan at all. And that's why I realised I needed a plan. And for me, and this often happens too with therapy for first responders, is that, trauma can be pretty complex, and it might need a fair bit of time to unpack it and go through it. But at some point, you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, righto, all this bad stuff's happened, and I can't change history. But what I am going to do is draw a line in the sand now, and I'm going to put some things in place that are going to help me learn to live with this history better. And so I pretty much did that myself, came up with a game plan, came up with my strategies, how I was going to try to work through to some recovery goals. And look, it's a pretty long story in that whole experience, but there was things I put into that game plan, like exercise, meditation, practicing gratitude, journaling, things like that, cognitive behavior therapy. But there was one in particular where I did some volunteer work for a mental health organisation here in Australia called Black Dog. And basically for the next couple of years, I rode around my motorbike all around outback New South Wales and Australia. And I would go into high schools and share my story with high school kids. And so, and give them some education about mental health, and really that whole thing about getting purpose back and having some sort of sense of worth again after everything I'd been through, that was pivotal in my eventual recovery. My emotional bucket was empty when I ended up in that hospital emergency ward, but these kids that I was out interacting with, they were filling it back up again. I had some beautiful experiences. So coming through that whole recovery journey, doing that volunteer work for a couple of years, then I started doing some work with the police force. And because I'd shown this work with Black Dog Institute over this period of time, I started doing another volunteer role, which was as a mentor with Backup for Life, which is a police legacy initiative to help other former cops out there. And I did that for 5 years. And I think that gave me the credibility to be able to come back to the police force then and say, look, this is what I've been doing. This is what I can do for you. And that's where it all went off. But so these
really
days
amazing
I'm running,
to see that, how helping someone else, being of service to someone, if you follow the 12-step model, I think that's the 12th step in like AA and some of those other programs where you're giving of service to other people, and how that brings healing. It's really fascinating how that happens.
One of the most pivotal pieces of research that I've ever had exposure to in my journey was from the US. It was a Professor Stephen Post, over there in America who wrote a paper called "It's Good to Be Good," and he's written a book on this too, which you can get over there in the States. I've ordered over here, and it's all about, you build an institute around it, and it's all about gratitude. It's all about the power, the healing benefits of giving back, usually through volunteer work and those sort of experiences. And it's sort of, I don't know, the things that he shared in those works really resonated with my own experience about in my healing journey as well. It's pretty incredible to be able to do that.
Was that challenging for you to stand in front of a group of people and share your story?
Yeah, it was. Well, the first high school out of all the high schools in Australia they sent me to, the first one they sent me to was my local high school. It was just coincident. And one of my kids was going to be in that first group. So there's 170 high school kids there. And, mate, I was so terrified going in there that I nearly pulled out. I was that close. But nothing in my police career scared me as much as what was going to happen with these kids. But, you know, I talk about this a lot with the resilience talks that I do and workshops, is that the way to overcome the things that worry you, scare you, is actually expose yourself to them. And it's, I think through that process of, I had to do it carefully, really carefully, because over that, especially those first couple of years where I was still in a state where it could go either way with my recovery, I had to take care, and self-care is really important to me, and that involves a lot of self-awareness. So the good thing about doing all that work with those kids as a volunteer was I could back off whenever I needed to. And but it was definitely challenging. It definitely got me out of my comfort zone, getting in front of not just kids and not just like people that in different audiences either. It's just the sharing of your own story makes you very vulnerable. And so that's probably the most challenging part for me. So it took a lot of, and well, the good thing was too, because this eventually opened doors to a new career for me down the track. And but the fact that I got to really learn the trade of sharing and of storytelling and speaking publicly in a volunteer capacity, it gave me a chance to build that skill set up and really sharpen up messaging and a lot of other things as well, which I'm very grateful for.
I know you guys, it's been all over the news where just a few weeks ago, there was a shooting at Bondi Beach and took, 15 lives, I believe it was. This is tragic circumstances. So how do you think that the first responders on the scene there will fare with that situation?
There is so many layers. There is so many layers to this. Like the actual shooting itself, there was only a few police that were actually in the area at the time, and the initial responding police did an amazing job. They were hopelessly outgunned. Like in Australia, we don't carry long arms, even in our police vehicles.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's just madness, and I think that's something that's going to definitely change from here on in. The long arms are mainly restricted to the specialist units, the tactical guys, and really in this modern world that we're in now, frontline uniformed police need long arms. They definitely need semi-automatic rifles at the very least. So we've got 2 or 3 first responding police there with Glock pistols against men who have semi-automatic shotguns and rifles. It's just they were hopelessly outmatched, but they ran towards. No one got any bullets in the back. They got them in the front because they were running towards the shooters. There was so much heroism. Unfortunately, 2 of the first responding police there were very young in their careers. Like one was less than a year of service, and he got shot in the face. He's lost vision in one of his eyes, and so it's pretty brutal. But they managed to. There's a lot of ballistic stuff that's got to get done now to confirm everything that happened. But it looks like one detective with a Glock at a range of 46 meters put down both of the offenders.
Wow.
And for anyone that's used handguns before, that's pretty good shooting, right?
That's amazing.
So that is, hopeless the outcome,
46
but they did
meters
some amazing
in the
stuff.
U.S., that would be what, about, how many yards would that be? 40 yards or so?
Yeah, I'm not
40,
it's
50
basically
yards.
it's nearly the length of an Olympic swimming pool. Okay. So
wow. Yeah.
that's a huge distance. I remember what I used to do with all my proficiency shoots every year, and doing a carefully aimed shot at 20 meters was, you're doing well. So under pressure with all the adrenaline, under fire, it was pretty incredible. So they got that trauma. There was it wasn't just the 15 people who were killed. There's 40 people that were shot as well.
Right.
So on top of the 15. So they got 55 casualties to try to deal with. Surf lifesavers were there. There was lots of people trying to just. I can only imagine what they were faced with there, but there's other levels of stress with that too, and it feeds into challenges, modern day challenges for law enforcement in general, is public scrutiny afterwards, and everyone's suddenly an expert on everything, especially with hindsight vision. Split second decisions get wound back into microseconds on slow motion, and so there's a bit of that going on. There was some pretty awful stuff going on social media as well. Someone took a photo of a policewoman with her hands in the air.
I saw
and
that
they
photo.
Put it on. Did you see that? And
I saw that.
She was a hero, and she was actually trying to draw fire away so people weren't being targeted in the crowd. And she was also trying to tell people to get down. And so a photo can mean multiple different things. We've got all these layers of trauma and stress and everything that's going to be put on those cops, not to mention now the stacks of inquiries that have come out. But then there's another layer to this as well, Conrad, is that our police force is, and I don't know what it's like in the States at the moment, but I know it's the same in the UK, is recruitment for law enforcement is really poor.
Oh, it is here. Yeah, for sure.
Is it? It's I don't know what's going on in the world at the moment where people are not prepared to lock into some sort of community service career that just gives you so much. But we're about 2,000 police down on our authorised strength of the 17,000 at the moment. That's huge. So we've got that layer of stress as well, as far as being able to staff these events. And then on top of that, we've had weekly demonstrations over here in all our capital cities, but particularly Sydney and Melbourne. In Melbourne, it's been daily protests, pro-Palestinian protests, and they have been relentless. And then they've taken law enforcement resources as well, trying to police it and maintain those. So when really the government should have stepped in and said no more, 2 years ago. But there's just been so much the police have had to contend with over here, culminating in this absolute tragedy that we're all going through. And mate, honestly, it's very hard to put into words about the feeling in this country right now. Politically, the place is ready to explode. There is so much anger, and I think because people have seen these weekly demonstrations and protests over things that have got nothing to do with Australia, conflicts that are on the other side of the world, but they're bringing all this hatred into our country. And we have a government over here that's very socialist, and they've sort of allowed this to happen. And I think a lot of people have just been sitting back, and there's a quite silent majority over here that has been putting up with it. But then when this happens, it's just like the match has been struck, and there's a lot of tension over here at the moment. There's a lot of anger towards our government. So, mate, there's going to be a lot that's going to play out over this in the months and probably the years ahead as well.
Wow. So do your police officers, your police units, they have like peer support? Is that a thing there, or is that something that's still being developed?
One of the good things, look, back when I was in the police force, there was we had like a psychology service that you could get access to, but it was a bit hit and miss. These days, they've got so many services that they've got availability to, and not only do they have psychs working within the police units, but you can go out and access your own psychologist, find who's a good fit for you, and then build a police force. They'll cover it as well. There's so many levels of help there now. The main thing is people actually using it. So you can throw all these resources towards law enforcement and make it available, but still got to bridge that cultural issue of, these are here, please use them, and don't feel ashamed to do that. So, but obviously with the critical incident side of things at the actual scene, there's definitely a lot of psychological services being thrown at the police that are working down there at the moment.
I know here the National Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union here, they do a survey every year where they survey officers, thousands of officers from all across the country, and the top 2 stressors are always organizational from within. Is that would that be similar there?
I would say so. Look, it's not just in law enforcement either. Even in the first responders with the ambulance services over here as well. It's paramedics. It's the same. I think a lot of this comes down to good education, or probably in this instance a lack of education. So. You know what I mean? It's sort of one of those things where you can do all the leadership courses under the sun to build up all that. But also, when it comes to the space around managing the well-being of your people, you need some different, like mental health and well-being training on that sort of thing too, so you know what to look for. And a lot of the mental health issues that often arise with police are often when they're being, going through some sort of disciplinary proceedings. With internal investigations, etc., because of some behavioural issue, and then the mental health things come out in that process, and sort of too late to do something about it then, because you're already sort of all the way down the road of this disciplinary process. So I don't know. It's something I think we can always do better with better leadership training for our managers, particularly when it comes to the well-being of their people.
In an ideal world, what would be the cultural change within law enforcement or first responders to get to a better place where people are better taken care of? What's the key ingredient there for that?
I think the first step is making it okay. Look, as far as self-stigma goes and people taking self-responsibility, and like I did not, I didn't do that. I buried it and tried to push through, which is, I think, one of the things for changing culture now is even getting people like me, but not just me, because I've got my journey. It doesn't mean everyone's the same. It's getting other people who've had similar journeys as well, and getting them to come back and say and share their stories with serving police officers in law enforcement, and just say, look, these are the things that were happening to me. This is what I failed to do about it. This is a consequence. Please don't make the same mistakes as me. Go out there, keep on top of your health and well-being moving forward, build your resilience, but make sure you keep going in and getting, well checks and make sure you go and see your psychologist whenever you're struggling. Go and put your hand up, get the help you need. Because, I mean, one of the things for me, it's really a maintenance issue. So you put your car in for a service, every 10,000 kilometres, and if you don't, the engine's going to blow up. Yeah. And it works the same for us as well. And that's the way I sort of explain it to serving police now. It's like, just imagine you're your car, and you need to go in and just do some maintenance as well, so that you don't burn out and blow up as well. So, I think that's part of the whole process. But it's just still that culture where, and it's not just cops either. I think a lot of people who are in helping roles with what they do in their careers or their other interests, is that people who are helpers usually are they put themselves last, and they're the last to look after themselves. But it's about changing that mindset. You've got to make you number one priority, because you're going to be no good helping other people if you don't look after yourself first.
It's often the helpers feel that I'm the helper. Why should I ask for help?
Definitely. It's a huge issue.
It's a big problem. Yeah. So do you think that the change can really take better effect if there's better teaching and training at the academy when people are first coming into law enforcement or first responder world?
Oh, definitely. So things with the training over here, look, it's very academic now. The law enforcement training. I don't know about what it's like in the States, but when I joined the police force, we had 3 months of basically hands-on training, what you needed to know, and then you learned the rest when you got out there, right? So, but these days it's a university degree joining the police force, and there's not a great deal of training goes into it as far as their mental health and well-being goes. And look, I've had even the insurance companies that look after all the injury claims for the police force try to get me into the police academy, and they're still reluctant to let me in to talk to the recruits. So we've still got.
Are they afraid you're going to scare them off or something? Or?
I think so. That's the only thing. I've tried to work out all the possible reasons why this could. What would be the barriers here? And the thing for me is when you go and share your story, especially with serving police, you don't want to scare them. Right. What you want to do is empower them. You want to give them all the information and say, look, you're about to walk into the best profession on the planet. There's no job I could imagine where I would have been happier than my law enforcement career. But you need to look after yourself too. This is what happened to me. I didn't, and I ended up out. But the thing when I go and share my story, I don't just share the doom and gloom about what happened to me and where that ended up. I also share my recovery journey. And in that, I share some of the strategies I use, like exercise and meditation and those sorts of things, and how I use them and why they work to get me where I am now. So that sort of gives them real life perspective on how, if I look after myself through exercise, if I have a good diet, if I'm meditating on a regular basis, doing some mindfulness work, keeping my stress levels at a manageable level, then I can actually see my way through all the way through to normal retirement in this job. And most people can if they look after themselves. So it's not just about the scaring them about the failure to look after yourself. It's also empowering them with the tools that they can take forward into their careers to build their resilience and make it, I guess, putting in mitigating factors for the risk that they're going to be facing moving forward.
How was the process of retirement for you, putting aside the badge and the gun and the uniform and going into something different? How was that for you?
Mate, it was probably the hardest part of the whole journey for me. So these days I'm running programs for police that are going through that journey now at the point of medical exit from the police force. And the police force are actually right on board working with me on promoting those programs. And one of the biggest topics I talk about is preparing them for that loss of identity. And I know that you've covered this many times before, Conrad, is like that loss of identity is similar with the military. It's like people who have had professional sporting careers. When you've built an identity around what you do for a living, and especially when it's something is so meaningful and so full of purpose, and then all of a sudden after 25 years, that's gone. It's like everyone knew me as Detective Sergeant Craig Semple. I knew me as, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you no longer have those police powers of arrest. I guess the day that I woke up, that morning, the day after my last day of service, I just thought, if something happens out there now, I'm the same as everybody else. I don't have any powers of arrest. So I've got to, how do I adapt to all this? And there's a grieving process associated with that, Conrad. It's like losing someone close to you. And I guess I didn't really understand it very well. And it's sort of grieving processes. Any sort of grieving process, there are stages of that process you need to go through. And I sort of didn't follow that sort of process because I didn't understand it. And I really think that complicated a lot of my mental health issues as well, because my life from the age of 18 years old, that was me. And then all of a sudden it was finished. So it actually took a long time. I guess one of the things I describe to police that are going through that now is that probably one of the best ways you can get over that loss of identity or resolve it is by getting out and building yourself a new identity. And so getting out and doing all that public speaking, getting out and doing all the work that I'm doing now, I made peace with the loss of my old identity by by building a new identity. So I used to be Craig Semple, Detective Sergeant. Now I'm Craig Semple, mental health educator. Mm-hmm. So that was a really important part for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you could go back to when you were 18, what would you tell yourself?
Oh my God, I've been asked that question a couple of times now, and I really don't know, because and the way I explain it is this. I once got asked by a bloke, and I was doing a talk for a men's group at a brewery, which was the right place for it. But I finished telling him a story, and this gentleman said, "Mate, you've talked a lot about a lot of the mistakes that you made in your life. But I want to ask you, if you had a chance to go back and rectify any of those mistakes, would you do it?" And I looked at him and I said, "Mate, you know what? No, I wouldn't." And the way I explained it was, all those mistakes that I made, including the ones that ended my career in the police force, all those mistakes have sort of shaped me into the person I am now. Mm-hmm. So all the good and the bad that I've done in my life has shaped me, and I sort of like who I am now. And, you know, does that sort of answer your question? So it's probably, I wouldn't give myself any advice at all. It's just, mate, you're going to go on a ride. Mm-hmm. Just hold on. Just hold on and do your best. That's sort of, because that's exactly what it is. It's just a ride, and you just sort of, I don't know. It's the same for everybody. You just get dealt a set of cards, and you just got to play them the best you possibly can.
That's kind of actually the answer that I was expecting you to say, because I've, and I look at my life and where I've come from, and everything that has happened to me in the past, everything that I've been involved in has brought me to this point today where I'm at.
Yeah, and it's sort of that's good, isn't it? It's a good thing, and there's obviously things that where part of my healing process too, Conrad, was I had to make peace with some of my life as well. Mm-hmm. And there were times where I made decisions and I behaved in ways that I certainly wasn't proud of. But guilt's a really poisonous thing. Mm-hmm. A little bit of remorse is really good for behavioral change. Yeah. But too much of it and dwelling on those sort of mistakes over too long a period of time, just all it's going to do is just keep bringing you down. And so I went through a period in that whole recovery and healing process where I had to draw a line in the sand and say, mate, you know what? All that's happened, nothing you can do to change history, but let's make some peace with it. So, and I had to come to some arrangements with myself in regard to those sorts of things. But even that is just, all that's made me a better person than what I was back then as well. So, and none of it would have happened if I didn't make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to that officer out there who is in where you were and struggling and not sure what to do?
I would say reach out to whatever source of professional and non-professional help, and I'll come back to that you have available to you, that is going to, and find the help that's a good fit for you as well. It's sort of going out and speaking to clinicians and therapists that you just don't connect with is not going to work. So you need to have that rapport and build that relationship. So I actually say to people who are not at that point where they're struggling to set these things up when you're well, so that when you are struggling, you've already got those established networks and contacts ready to go. And that includes therapists as well. But definitely go and reach out and speak to somebody, but also have not just your therapist, but also a good network of family and friends around you as well, that you can fall back on and talk to any time you need. One of the things I think, Conrad, with law enforcement, the forgotten people in this whole this whole industry of law enforcement is family. And, we talked a lot about law enforcement and cops getting the training and getting the therapy, but, the canary in the coal mine for mental health for law enforcement is family members.
Sure.
But they're the ones that are going to pick up and know when things are going, when things are out of shape for the people that they love, because they know them so well. Yeah. And they're living with them. And
is that because oftentimes the officer, the person out there, is putting on that mask on the job and hiding that? Yeah. But it kind of comes off at home, right?
It comes off at home, but even look, there can be some masking goes on at home too. We're not very good, often, at coming home and telling our loved ones what we did that day at work.
Sure.
It's one of those things that the way I describe it in my own experience is that my home was my sanctuary, and I didn't want my home to be sort of tainted by the malevolence of the outside world that I was dealing with every day. But part of that was avoidance as well. I think I didn't want to have to go home and tell my first wife, all the stuff that I was experiencing all that at that time either. And that's not helpful, because what happens is that you go on, sometimes there's a divergence in a relationship. Like, I'm having all these massive experiences in my life at work. And so I'm heading in one direction, and maybe my wife is heading in a different direction. And because it's not a shared journey. But also on top of that, I think family members, especially when it comes to behavioral change, are going to see definitely where the mask off, and particularly when it comes to maybe an increase in substance use, particularly alcohol and things like that, anger, irritability, usually that will come out at home, those sort of things as well. They're going to know your sleeping habits and when sleep's being affected, all the things that build relationships and relationships that build on. When the fractures start to appear, it's not going to be your workmates who are going to notice that. Often it's the people at home. So I'm a really big advocate for family members being trained up and educated about what to look forward to, and also having the tools to be able to have those conversations with their loved ones in a way that's not going to upset them. And so does that make sense? Like it's a real big part of the missing piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any kind of training program for families? Is that something that someone has developed?
There's not that it has got traction. There was an organisation here which I'm a big supporter of in Australia called Quest for Life, and they do trauma-related wellbeing programs, residential programs, that sort of thing. I know a lot of police that have gone through them, and I've donated some of the proceeds of my books to those guys as well. And they were doing some really good training for families, but it was only a small uptake of people, and they had to fund it themselves. So there is a big part we need to catch here. The other side of it is trying to get people to actually attend when the presentations are put on, and if you've got to get them to actually turn up. So that's a big thing too.
Are the first responders in Australia, are they kind of considered here in America? They often talked about the family of the police department or the fire department, but oftentimes it's kind of just in word only. It's not really in deed. Do you find that there as well?
In so far as I get where you're going with that. Yeah, look,
like we're all brothers here. We're all brothers and sisters. We take care of each other.
Yeah, but to a point.
To a point, yeah.
So the thing with law enforcement, as you would know, is that the camaraderie that we experience with each other, with our mates, it's like you don't even need to speak the words to understand the feeling. It's just you just got each other. But often, so even when some people, cops they might have a period where they're off work because they're very unwell, and then all of a sudden the contact with their former colleagues sort of dies off.
Yep.
I don't think there's any ill feeling that sort of drives that. What I think is the key underlying cause of that lack of connection afterwards is that the fear for the cops that are still there, their old colleagues. It's almost like I think sometimes they think they're going to catch it. You know what I mean? It's like contagious. A contagion. Yeah, it's contagious. It's because they know they're vulnerable as well, because they got the same, and a lot of them will be experiencing.
Or is it a fear of maybe being exposed as also having problems?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. Definitely, that would be a key issue as well. So I don't know. There's so many layers to it, and look, we'll never get it perfectly right. It's mental health and well-being is such a complex issue in the wider community. But then you throw in all the challenges of law enforcement on top of all those pre-existing ones. Then we've got it's a huge mountain to have to deal with. But I guess it just comes down just breaking it down into bite-sized, manageable pieces, which is starting off with manager training, as you highlighted the importance of earlier, training for all the rank and file as well, so that and I don't mean just once and that's set and forget. I mean ongoing training every year, and also training for families, etc. as well. Education's a huge part of it. But one of the things I often draw attention to is that, so the police over here, one of the big issues when you've got minimal resources because you've got staff shortages is training then takes a lot of your available resourcing away from frontline policing, right? So, but they've got to do their mandatory proficiency training with their firearms and everything else that they use. 2 days a year goes into that. So my argument with that is we are probably losing 10 times as many police to suicide than what we're losing to, say, active shooter type situations, at least 10. But we're not doing any training for the mental health side of things to prevent those suicides. So, if there's such if it's so important to be able to be an accurate shot, so we do that training every year, then wouldn't it be even more important to put some mental health training in every year as well, so that we can help prevent some of those suicides that happen every year as well?
It boggles my mind that sometimes cities leadership don't understand that. It's the same way here. It's, they have to have those annual reviews, on weapons and all the things, but, and the state of Maryland here, they just implemented for all law enforcement now, every year have to have a meeting with the psychologist and what they call a checkup. But for many, I've heard, it's just to check the box. I got to go in and see the shrink, check, done that. It doesn't really carry the weight that it needs to carry.
So this is what they call well check over here in New South Wales. So in Australia, they call it well check, but it's not available to all police. So they've basically only offering it to people that work in child protection. Highway patrol, I think, is another one, and I can't remember that's maybe homicide squad. I can't remember now, but there's sort of rank and file uniform police that are turning up to all the horrors of everyday policing that need it. Now, when it's mandatory, that's where it becomes a problem, because it does feel like a tick box. Yeah. And that's where things need to be tailored to the individual. So I think one of the ways they've got around that in New South Wales is what I was sharing with you before, where they've got now a policy where you can go out and source your own clinicians. But the problem with that is it comes back again to self-responsibility. You need to actually access it. But you can go and find your own, and then they can send the bill to the police force and they'll pay it, right? So I think that's a bonus. When it's a mandatory type of situation, that can be really, really difficult. Yeah.
Then you have some clinicians who kind of take advantage of that and, kind of put out their shingle as, come sit in my office for an hour and I'll check your box,
Yeah. So, and look, even with the management side of it, which we've touched on a bit today, is when people are off work, so they're off doing it, getting treatment, they're mentally, whatever they call it in America, we call it, flaming out and falling off your perch over here and those sort of things. So while they're out getting treatment and off work, managers have a mandatory obligation. They've got to contact them every week or every month. But those cops that are off, they know that that's a ticker box thing as well. So whatever is being done, it just has to be genuine, rather than just the policy checking process as well. So I think what you're talking about there with mandatory checkups, it's great to have the initiatives, and if some people use it and take full advantage of it, then that's fantastic as well. But also with the mandatory type processes is that there's going to be a fear, because it's organised by the organisation, that confidentiality could be compromised there, and management's going to find out if I open, if I say something, if I say something in these mandatory checks, are they going to take my firearm off me, take my badge and say, mate, you're too dangerous to have out there. We can't let you get. So there's a lot of barriers to those sort of mandatory problems or mandatory pathways as well, I reckon.
Yeah. So many challenges in all these departments and so many. But there are people doing amazing things and doing amazing, and from everything I've seen, you're doing some really fantastic work, and you've written some books as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of my recovery strategies was journaling, and I'm a big advocate for prizing your life apart in writing your experiences out. And when I finished my first journal, it was about 5 years of my whole recovery journey. Doing that, my doctor read it and he said, mate, you have an ability to tell your story here. You need to get this published. So there was a long story involved in that, but it was a 10-year process, and eventually got my first book published, which was it was true crime. The Cop Who Fell to Earth. I don't know how you get it over in America, but it's on Amazon. Audio book. They've got all that sort of stuff now as well. And then short time after that was published, I put together a book about recovery from a practical lived experience point of view, so that people could see not only how some strategies are helpful, but how they work in the real world as well. So I share the stories how I use them in that book as well. That's a good resource for families of law enforcement to get an understanding, particularly those who are dealing with mental health problems and going through some sort of recovery journey. Like I said, education for families is very important. When they read or listen to that one, it'll give them a called
Getting Back Up Again.
Getting Back Up Again, a plan to get your head back in the game. That's on audio book as well. That one I narrated. The other one was an actor that narrated that one. So that one's all the police stories basically are in that one, and a little bit of what happened.
That's called The Cop Who. What was it? The Cop
Who Fell to Earth.
Okay.
So that includes some of the stuff I was doing with the kids when I was on the motorbike and all that later on as well. But gives anyone that's interested in that side of things, especially about some of the law enforcement challenges in Australia with outlaw motorcycle gangs and other things as well. If we've got a huge problem with them over here, that gives a good insight into all that side of it as well. But the thing with even that first book, Conrad, is that, I was talking about how often we don't go home and share stories with our families about what we did at work. I've had so many family members reach out to me after reading that and saying thank you, because it's given them an understanding of what their loved ones have actually been doing and why they are the way they are right now, and in those journeys as well, which is, that makes me feel really good to hear that sort of feedback.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, what are a few things that you do on the regular basis to keep you healthy and well?
Mate, number one, exercise. It is key. I not only as far as the recovery strategy, but all the things I did to get myself well, I maintain now to stay well. So it's exercise is my number one. Definitely for managing stress, for improving sleep, and for lifting my mood, making me feel good. It's exercise, and I've got a variety of different things that I tap into for exercise as well. I get into nature a lot, so I do a lot of beach and bush walks. I do a lot of swimming out in the open ocean, and I do regular meditation. I wouldn't call it daily. I'm not perfect, but I definitely do very regular meditation still, which is important. I'm still doing a lot of volunteer work, so that giving back part of my life is still very, very important as well. So that's an important one, and daily practice of gratitude, mate, is also very important. One of my strategies was called gratitude journaling. You write down 3 things, at night time before you go to bed. Just write down 3 things you're grateful for the day you've just had, and that was really pivotal for me, because what that did, it gave me a chance to retrain my brain, that not only to notice good things when they happen in my day, but to stop and appreciate them more. But I had to do it through the actual journaling to do that training. But the best thing about it too is it trained my brain not only to stop and notice, but things I used to miss in my day that were good, that I would go through and I would sort of miss them, I now catch. But it's a really good one for cops too, because because we become quite cynical over the course of our careers because we're dealing with so much negative human behavior that eventually you just see the world as a bad place full of bad people. And doing gratitude journaling was a chance for me to rewire my brain that the world's not just full of bad people. There's some really good stuff happens out there as well. So practicing gratitude is very important.
Yeah, that's a powerful tool. I try to do that every single morning when I get up. And then on Mondays, I have, for better or for worse, I have a TikTok account. And Mondays, I put out my Monday gratitudes every Monday morning. And so I'm usually on a walk. I do a 2-mile walk every morning. And this morning it was quite cold, and I was out, and I just expressed my gratitudes. And it makes me feel better when I do that. You know, when I have to look for things that I'm grateful for. That process is really transformative.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be big things, as you already know. It just can be the simple things in life. And, but also I think it's wonderful that you're sharing that as well. Keeps it front of mind for other people.
Yeah, it does. And then I encourage people to do the same and, put it in the comments and things like that. And so I get some feedback like that. And this morning, I'll just express my gratitude right now. This morning I was walking, and there's a little part of the path that goes through a little forest area. And in the middle of the trail was a beautiful red fox. He's crossing the trail. He stopped and he watched us. I had my dog with me, and man, I'm just grateful for that opportunity to see this red fox out there in nature.
That's really cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. That's it, because, you've trained yourself to sort of stop and truly notice. And those sort of things, which is cool as well. Sometimes we got some wild ducks that pretty much invaded our whole community here. I lived on the water. And but even watching it, some days where I'll just say I'm so grateful for what I just seen there, because the ducks they'll hold up traffic when they're waddling across the street. And I think it's so funny to watch. And I think it lifts my mood, makes me feel good. I'm grateful. Thank you very much for the ducks. So just little things I think make all the difference. And gratitude is something you can do as a family too, with your kids and those sort of things. I remember when I first met my second wife, my second and my last wife, I guarantee you that. When I first met Kyla, she had a thing with her kids where you go around the table and everyone's got to say one thing that bad that happened in their day. So it gets kids talking about the negative stuff. Then all the good positive, say one good thing, one funny thing that happened in your day. And eventually I had one thing you're grateful for your day as well. So then you can do that as a family around the dinner table, and rather than kids sitting on their phones with their iPads, etc., we're talking, and that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Well, Craig, this has been a great conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and have you on the program, and so grateful for your healing journey and that you've gotten to the place where you're at today, and you're helping others now. And that's just wonderful. So thanks again for being on the show today.
Yeah, well, good on you too, Conrad, because this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and having people like you that are going out there and shining a light on these issues for first responders, I think is very, very important. And look, mate, definitely you've got to get over here to Australia and sing out. We'll look after you for sure.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. I will plan on it, and I look forward to being back to Australia. It's been too many years since I've been there. So
do you ride a motorbike?
It's one thing I have never done.
So we got a big ride for remembrance for fallen police officers every year with about 2,000 motorbikes. We do this, so if you ever come over, you got to try to time it for that one.
Okay, I do ride a bicycle. I rode a bicycle across the U.S. a couple of years ago. So
that's hardcore. Right across the U.S.
Yeah, from the West Coast up in Oregon, Pacific Ocean, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean here in Maryland. So.
Okay, I tip my hat to you for that one.
It was a tour, kind of a promotional tour for my documentary, and we stopped in cities along the way and showed the film. And I recruited my buddy John to go with me, and he said yes. And so we set off across the country. It took 65 days, and it was amazing.
Well, has he forgiven you?
Well, apparently he has, because we went on a bicycle ride the other night out in the cold. So,
well done. That's fantastic, mate. Great news.
Yeah. So I can ride a pedal bike, but a motorbike, I don't have much experience on that.
So. We'll put you in one of the sport cars, mate, for sure. You'll love it.
All right. I look
Okay.
forward to that. Craig, I'm grateful for your honesty, and I'm grateful that you stayed, because your story puts language to what so many people feel but can't name. The quiet slide from coping to surviving to collapsing. And if you're listening right now and you recognize yourself in any part of this, please hear me. You don't have to wait until it gets worse to ask for help. In fact, one of the most important things Craig said is that you need to build your support network when you're well, so it's there when you're not. And if you're a spouse, a partner, or a family member, your role matters more than you probably realize. You may be seeing the early signs before anyone else does. If this episode helped you, hey, please share it with a friend or someone on your team. And if you haven't yet, what are you waiting on? Please subscribe. That way you don't miss what's coming next. Craig, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate the work that you're doing to help others. And finally, if you're watching this or listening to this, please remember that you are not alone. And if you don't know where to turn and you don't have anywhere else to turn, you can always dial 988 for help. And we also have a list of resources, including phone numbers you can call at the firstresponderwellness.co/resources. That's firstresponderwellness.co/resources. I put the link at the top of the show notes. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.